Hello everyone. Hi. Very
Hello.
good morning. Assalamualaikum. Um, Imagine as an archaeologist, imagine if you're on site and you're holding a hand and you realize that the hand that you're holding touches something, and the last time that hand touches something was like 10,000 years ago. So that how it feels to become, to work as an bioarchaeologist in Malaysia. Today I will take you to the valleys of Lenggong, sharing you a story of prehistoric humans, to the Shalvidin of Penang, as well as the limestone cliffs of Sabah, and trying to understand the human, and the dead can tell a lot if we know how to listen to them. So we had a very long history, a very long story, but as you guys can remember, when we were in high school, we learned about history most of the time. We didn't learn about prehistory. The fact that before there's a written records, before the colonial power came to Malaysia, there were people here, people who hunted, gathered, cared for the sick, and buried the dead with full ritual and respect. So they left us with their bones, and with that bones, we archaeologists learn how to read them. So the dead have a great deal to say, only if we know how to listen to them. Before we start, I would like to tell you a story about how we read the skeleton, and it's called the science of taphonomy, from a Greek word taphos, means burial, and nomos, law. We do not just study what remains, we study why it remains the way it does. Every single thing that they did to the dead is a decision, making process. And we studied from the way they buried it until ultimately or eventually until it's fossilized. Decomposition, how they place the dead and what are the things that they place around the dead. These are all tell us about our story, human story. We studied on the position, whether it's flex, whether it's extended. There's certain meanings to it. And I will tell you a story about it later on using an example that we found in Malaysia. The depth, is it deep or is it shallow graves? Orientation, does it mean something if the head is placed facing north? For the Muslim nowadays, the face is facing towards the Kaaba. But is it the same during the prehistoric times? Grave goods, what are the things placed within the burial itself, and why are those things placed in the burial? What is the significance of those objects? And of course, the teeth and bones could tell us something or more about the dead. So we will start with the oldest evidence that we have in Malaysia, which is the deep skull in Guania in Sarawak. It is called the deep skull because it was found in a place within that cave, the Nia cave, called as a hell trench, very deep, and it's actually it was buried within a stratified layer of ancient soil and ash. Only a partial of this skeleton was found, the skull cap, not the complete skeleton, or even the complete cranium. It was buried, surrounded with animal remains and flake stone tools. And imagine, this was 40,000 years ago. During the same time, Neanderthals were still roaming Europe. And we had an evidence of a human during that time in Sarawak. It tells us something profound. 40,000 years ago, people already understood that a life had a value beyond its death. People understand the life after death. Take you closer to Peninsular Malaysia, much closer to UKM, is a place called the Lenggong Valley. It's one of the World Heritage Sites in Malaysia. And this is where the story that I really want you to listen to, and I want to focus on this story. In this valley, There are many limestone caves, and one of the most important caves is called Gua Gunung Ruto, the Cave of the Fallen Mountain, GGR. It's located about 124 meters above sea level, and this is actually the highest cave because the rest of the caves you can just walk in and easily access, but not this cave. So when the team of archaeologists from University of Science Malaysia, led by the prominent emeritus professor Datin Paduka Zuraina Majid, surveyed the whole valley, they are very interested with this cave. They say, okay, we have one big cave here, one small cave. What's in there? So they do excavation and discovered one skeleton, which is the as Perak Man, buried in a flex position, oriented east to west. At that time, when they found Perak Man and doing analysis of it, it was the oldest, the oldest, most complete human skeletons in Southeast Asia. There are other skeletons, older skeletons, but they're not as complete as Perak Man. So a hero from 10,000 years ago. Why? Because when they excavated it and analyzed it, they realized this is a very special skeleton. It was dated back, dated to 10,000 years ago, 10,120 years ago. And the stature during life is about 154 centimeter tall, maybe, and some of you are actually that height. And he died between 40 to 45 years, which is a very old age, given that there's no hospital, there's no medicine like nowadays, and compared to what now, 40, 45 is considered like 100 or 110 years old, because the average lifespan is only 20 to 30 years old that time. So it's double the lifespan during the Paleolithic time. So his bone shows the marks of life fully lived. It's quite interesting that the teeth is also very flat. If you can feel your teeth now, you can see, grooves and stuff like that. But over the time, because it depends on what you eat, so for the Perak Man, is flat, means that he consumed a lot of fibrous, rough diet during his life. But interestingly, one of the best thing about Perak Man that we can learn is that he was born with a genetic deformity called brachymesophalangeal type A2. It's a genetic deformity. It's a very rare genetic deformity. Even in nowadays, not just during that time. Now it's a very rare genetic disease. So in a prehistoric world requiring constant physical exertion for foraging and hunting, having someone with a disability can also mean abandonment, or even worse. So what is this genetic deformities? Basically, in a nutshell, his left limbs, hand as well as leg, is actually shorter than the right. So when he walks, he's actually limping because it's shorter. At the same time, his curvature, his backbones he has a scoliosis, so he's actually bending because of that disease as well. So for someone who's actually lived very long age, 40 to 45 years old, disabled, there must be something unique about this person. How can a disabled person survive that long? In a tropical rainforest environment, there must be someone actually taking care of him. Shows love and compassion. TLC, tender love and care. When they found the burial, they realized that he wasn't just disposed, in a very hasty manner. There was a ritual, and trying to respect who he was, even though he was disabled. With that skeleton, archaeologists found 208,000 shells, riverine shells, and these riverine shells you have to collect from the river. 9 species of different animals, which we can find nowadays, the same kind of animals in tropical rainforests, but it needs to be hunted. So they place those animals and shells uh, below his body, and all the animals on his hand. And around his body, they also place 10 stone tools as part of the equipment or tools that might help him to live but a better life in the afterlife. So this is a very act of love. It's not just the disposal of death. It's an act of compassion. So imagine 10,000 years ago, people without religion, without a set of recorded ethics or moral conduct, did this to their elders and did this to their to the dead person. So, with another skeletons like that, I would like to share is what we call GK1, also found in Lego. All these skeletons come in a very dramatic names, Deep Skull, Perak Man. But this is one of the women that we almost forgot, basically. Buried in a fetal position in another cave not far from where Gua Gunung Ruto is Gua Kajang. So he's actually slightly older than Perak Man, about 10,000 years ago. Standing wise, during life, is about 155, and also buried with the same kind of equipments or tools with Perak Mans. Surprisingly, we can link the genetic and also the race during that time to Australomelanozoid, the same people who live at the Aborigines of Australia nowadays. She had a name that we will never know, but she was there and buried in a very proper way. Going up north, there's also another skeletons which I studied carefully, called the Penang woman, or skeleton number 42 from Wakapah. And this is also another interesting stories of our ancestors. Why is it number 42? Because there were used to be 41 skeletons that were brought back to Netherlands by the British during that time. So this is the only skeleton that was found on site and still preserved nowadays in the Wakapah Gallery. So it was dated about 5,700 years ago, much younger compared to the Perak Man. But my research, where I did actually a stable isotope analysis, trying to figure out what she ate during her life. Because you are defined by that. You are what you eat. And we know the site is located very close to the shoreline. So the assumption is that when you live by the shore, you will eat a marine food. That is not the case with Penang woman. She prefers, based on the stable isotope analysis, she prefers to eat fish from the river nearby and eats a lot of vegetables, plants, sea tree plants, and only consume just a little bit of seafood in terms of shells. She is a reminder that all of this, diets, records like this, they were actually real people doing daily routines just like us. Surprisingly, based on the numbers, the 41 skeletons that have been analyzed as well, the teeth shows a very clear mark of red stain. And this red stain comes from a betel nut chewing. Pina. Yes, betel nut chewing, betel nut, pina. When you read, it will stain on your teeth and it will stay there forever. It's really hard to get rid of it. So, unmistakable mark of betel nut chewing shows that this is a continuity. Until nowadays, people are still eating pina, chewing betel nut. A social habit still alive across Southeast Asia today. It means that, it shows that these people, separated at least 5,000 years from us, were not so different. Still practicing the same kind of things, consuming more or less same kind of diet. When I look at all these burials from many places across Malaysia, there is one thing that struck me: the diversity in death. People not just buried in a fetal position. The reason why Perak man was buried in a fetal position, because they believe that when you were born as a baby, you will be sent back to the afterlife in the same position as well. So that was why it was buried in a fetal position. Over the time, then it become extended. Until now, I mean, we don't send people in the buried position, fetal position anymore. So you will lay them down in an extended position. But across Malaysia, there are different kind of rituals as well, and the way you treated the dead. For example, in Sabah, about 1,000 years ago, they buried their dead in the log coffin, and that log is belian, a very hard, tough wood. So they cut down the tree, split it in half, and make like a boat coffin, a log coffin, and put that body inside. In Lenggong, again, back to Lenggong, during the Metal Age time, they buried the dead with lots of ornaments. Shell, necklace, our first Habib jewel, basically. Metal ornaments, because they believe that in the afterlife, you need all these things for whatever reasons they believe in. And in the Lembah Bernam, a border of Selangor and Perak, they found a lot of this cis grave, a grave made of granite that was quarried from the Titi Wangsa range, and very much a trend throughout the world that time, about 1,000 years ago during the Metal Age. And it signified a very elite burial. Different beliefs, different centuries, all saying the same thing: this life mattered. But somehow the problem with our heritage nowadays is that it's slowly disappearing. We live in a country with a very high density of prehistoric and historical records, whether we know it or not. But we are losing them not in a catastrophic moment. We are losing them slowly, side by side, layer by layer, somehow, to development, to neglect, and to a simple absence of public awareness. I think that majority of nations don't really know all the things that I've shown you before. But that's the point. I mean, in order for us to know and understand, we have to love it. You cannot love what you do not know, and you cannot protect what you do not love. So I appeal to you, in order to understand more about our history and prehistory. First is to know your own story. Sites like the Lenggong Valley and Nia, and many other sites in Malaysia, are World Heritage Sites. There are opening chapters of who we are. So maybe you can learn one or two about it. Demand protection of these sites. Ask your local representative, the authorities, what is the plan for our prehistoric place? Okay, there's funding of it. Who is responsible? And the third thing is bring the next generation. If you have children, if you have a cousin, a nephews or niece, take them to these sites. A child who has stood there will never vote to build over it. Again, memory and all this deliberate intention of honoring the dead is the oldest form of love. Our job as archaeologists or historians is not just to excavate the past, it's to give them humanity, real lives, real stories, and real people who were here long before us. Perak Men's community preserve him in the earth with care and intention, so that 10,000 years later, we can actually find him, and through him find ourselves. The question is, the dead have spoken. Are we actually listening? Thank you very much.